friends, welcome back. I'm so happy you can be here to spend some time with me today. Now, this is going to be the first in a 4-day series, and I'm going to call this series Focus On, and I hope to bring more of these style for future projects. Now, not on the months where we already have a long series like the Christmas in July and 13 Days of Halloween, but I think for the other months I would like to be able to bring you a 4-day series and bring you projects that are created with collections that are really inspiring to me. I really want to create with them, and so this is one opportunity to get deeper into the collection or into the process and all of the details. And you all did seem to express to me that you wanted to see more of the details, and this is a great opportunity to stretch the project out over several days so that we can really go over the process. So for this series, we're going to be creating this accordion style memory keeping folio. I'm not really sure what I'm calling it at this point, but it has a beautiful tie here with some ribbon, and then it's just chock full of layered inserts using that Wilderness collection from Mintay paper. So stick with me over the next several days and we will create this project together. Okay, so for today on part 1, we're going to be working on the base for our finished project. Before we get into that portion of the tutorial, though, I did want to share with you, this was the sample I created while I was working out the measurements and the dimensions and all the folding lines. And in my head, this was going to be perfect. It has 4 compartments in its accordion style, and then it has a spine of 3/4 of an inch, and I thought that was going to be great. So I had this one all worked up, and then I cut all of my pieces for the one that I had planned to demonstrate for this tutorial today. And then when I began working on the inserts and adding them in, it was very apparent that it was not going to fit. So I did go back to the drawing board just a little bit on that. And so I left the actual front dimensions the same, and then I added a significant amount to the base. So this is going to accommodate all the inserts that I want to include for my finished project. But no worries, I'm going to be able to use this one for a different project, and of course this one that I had planned to demonstrate today. So another thing that I did while I was working up the final dimensions for the project for today was I created a couple other covers, and I decided that I could just include these to make one super mega folio. So maybe that'll be a project for another day. But for today, I did want to start with the cover. And so I've got a couple of different types of paper here. We're going to be working with 110-pound cardstock as well as 65-pound weight cardstock, and I will let you know as we're working through those so you'll know when to switch them. For the base of the cover, this is the outside, I'm using the 110-pound, and my measurements are 11 3/4 wide and 6 3/4 inches tall. And I have this scored at 4 3/4 and also 7 inches. So now I have my finished dimensions of 6 3/4 by 4 3/4, and then it's 2 1/4 in the base. And once again, this is the 110-pound cardstock. I'm also going to be including these 4 inserts, and I have switched the weight for these to be 65-pound weight. And I have a 10 inches wide by 6 3/4 inches tall. It is scored at 4 3/4 and then also at 5 1/4. So this is going to be the same dimensions on the front, but my base here is going to be 1/2 inch, and I'll have 4 of those. So it will span the width of this portion in the middle. Now remember that I said this was 2 1/4, and that's because when you get all these lined up with the accordion papers in between, it does take up that little bit of extra room, and I want it to be a nice crisp fold when I get them all added to this cover. So what I'm going to do now is bring in the accordion pieces, and these are all cut from the 65-pound weight cardstock as well, and they are 4 inches high by 2 inches wide. They are scored at every 1/2 inch. So I've got one little peak and 2 little valleys here. I've put my adhesive here so that I have the peak on the inside. And there are 8 of these, so 4 for either side. So I'm just going to very quickly run through here and pull these tapes off. So now I've got all my tape pulled off and I can start adding these to my inserts. I'm going to come in very quickly here and just put a little bead of glue as I'm working along. Remember, this project is going to be very heavy and it will take some extra adhesive just to make sure that everything stays nice and securely in place. So I'm just running a little bead of that as I work along so that I don't have wet adhesive to stick to myself. And I'm going to put the peak inside this folded area, and I'm going to line that up on the outside. And get that adhered. And you see I've just given it some good pressure so that I make sure that has a good contact, and the adhesive tape will hold that in place while the wet glue sets up so we can continue to work along. And so I just want to do that for all these pieces, and that will be for both sides. So I'm going to have 4 inserts that look like this. It will have one accordion fold on the inside, and then we'll stack the 4 together. And while I'm working along, I'm just going to go ahead and drop in a couple layers of my tape to the bottom here as well so that I'll have a good contact with the base. And because this is a 1/2 inch wide, I can get 2 widths of my tape here as well. And then I'll add my tape on the outside here as well. So that will be the portion that is connected to the next one. So I'll just go ahead and do that for all of the 4 inserts, and then we'll come back in when I've got that ready. Okay, so I've got all 4 of my inserts done now, and the next step is going to be to pull this tape and then add a layer of that glue and then secure the next section to it. That's why we only have tape on one side. We only need to tape that one. And then we will have a single unit to adhere to our base. So let's go ahead and do that now. By the way, you do not need to use white cardstock. If you like a different color to coordinate with the project that you're making, you definitely want to go ahead and do that. But I just really liked this as a kind of way to brighten up that paper collection. Once I had my matting chosen, which is a very nice earthy chocolatey brown, I really thought that it would help to brighten up the whole look of the project. So that is why I chose white. And now I'm going to go ahead and add a little bead of glue all the way around. And remember, we've got that tape in place, so that will hold it while the glue sets up. So we don't have to wait for each layer to completely dry before we move on to the next one. You could probably also use Aleene's or art glitter glue, something like that. This is just what I had on hand, but it would probably be a good idea to have a good eraser ready like this, mono, because you can get the adhesive off if you have a splooge and it comes out where you don't want it to. So I'm trying to decide what's the best way to get this lined up. I think it matters more that everything is straight and square coming from the bottom, because we have to adhere all of that to one section. So I'm just going to go ahead and get that positioned. And then I'll give it a little bit of a press so that it will have a good contact, so that glue will be good and secure. So let's go ahead and do that for all the sections. We'll add 2 more to this one, and then we'll come back in and add it to our base. Okay, so now I've got all of my sections adhered, and you can see that we're going to have 4 compartments in our accordion fold. And I went ahead and pulled the tape from the bottom. Remember, we added that so that we could get a good contact with the base. And then I just went ahead and pulled the tape off one of these sides as well so that we can begin to add it to this base. But before we do that, I have 2 more smaller pieces that I want to include. And remember, I said how thick and heavy this was going to be, so I want to add a couple of extra layers of thickness to the bottom just so that I know that it will hold a nice shape when it's filled up. And so these are 110-pound papers that are cut to be 2 1/4 by 6 3/4, and that's going to be the full width of this center portion. I put 1 on the inside and 1 on the outside, and I did that so that I didn't add a lot of extra bulk to the inside, so the insert wasn't going to line up correctly. Okay, so now what I want to do, rather than try and work adhesive on the back side of this, I'm just going to go ahead and lay my glue down on the base itself. And I'm trying not to get too close to the edge, but close enough so that when I add that second layer, it will distribute the glue closer to the edge without running out the sides. And I'll just go ahead and zigzag in the middle here as well, because I think it will be good to have all that extra adhesive contact. So let's go ahead and add this now. I think it will be easier to fold up one of the sides so that I have a good clear idea of where my score line is going to be. And then I'll drop this in lined up to the bottom and to that score line. And it should hopefully be right where I want it. And so it does. Thank you for that. So while this is still open, I'm going to go ahead and take my scissor here with the long handle and just kind of run it down into these pockets. I picked these because they have a nice rounded edge. I don't want anything too sharp going into there that might accidentally tear through my paper. So this is just going to go ahead and give a good pressure, and that base will stay down nice and tight. Okay, so I pulled the tape off of one of the sides here, you can see, and I'm going to go ahead and add more of that glue. You know how I love glue. I'm kind of surprised it's not all over me at this point, because for me this is a lot of glue. I'm just making sure that this is going to support the weight of all of that collection. And then I'll just go ahead and fold that up, and it will be nicely secured on the outside. So let's do this side as well. Okay, so there's just 2 more pieces to add, and that is going to give a little bit of strength and support to these outside edges. We don't want it to bow out too much when all of the inserts are included. So I've cut 2 pieces. They are 6 3/4 by 9 1/2, and then scored at 4 3/4. It's 110 pound because you do want that extra stability and structure for this. And I'm just putting my tape on both sides, and I'll go ahead and glue that just like I did the rest of the inserts. I'm just going to add this into the accordion, making sure that I'm on the outside edge of where that accordion fold is, so that I don't accidentally seal it up. And I'll just slide that in there and then press it into place. See how nice and thick that is? It's going to be so sturdy. And also it gives the outside a very nice finish edge on the top. So I will appreciate that extra detail. Okay, we'll do the same thing for the back. Okay, so I've got my front and back cover added, and I'm so happy with how thick and chunky and sturdy this is. You can see that we have 4 nice generous sized pockets to fill with our collection, and so that will be it for part 1 of our series. I hope you plan to come back tomorrow for part 2. We're going to start working on the inserts. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave me a comment and a big thumbs up. And if you want to find links to our social media sites, they are in the description. So if you're not already, I would love for you to subscribe. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I'll see you tomorrow.